a lot of the standard stuff here. During the initial presentation, we'll just ask everyone to kind of stay muted or mute yourselves just so that we can, keep everything running smoothly. Like folks are already doing, introduce yourself in the chat and also type questions at any point, because what we'll do with those questions is once we hit the Q&A portion, we'll run through those questions first, and then we'll kind of go through hand raise style and get through the rest of everyone's questions. But if anything urgent does come up, please feel free to unmute yourself or use the hand raise function. Last time I did lose internet, so that was sort of an urgent thing. And so feel free to speak up if something doesn't look right. But hopefully that won't happen today. And again, like I mentioned, we'll do a Q&A after the presentation. So type those questions in, keep them coming. And the last thing is Jason will be our timekeeper. He's just going to keep us on track and hopefully, ensure that we're not going over and getting to all the good stuff that we need to get to. So with that, we'll just jump in, give everyone an overview of the agenda. You should have seen it earlier, so it shouldn't be anything new, but we'll spend about 15 or 20 minutes or so on just going over EmPower, and in particular kind of common questions that have come up recently, and do a quick refresher on clean energy opportunities and barriers. And then we'll host about maybe 10 to 15 minutes on Q&A, depending on how many questions folks have. And then the latter half we'll spend in breakout rooms. So we'll do 2 different breakout rooms. The first will be more of a facilitated exercise with Mass CEC staff, where we'll ask a few questions and get folks' feedback, start learning about your ideas and thoughts about the program, or just kind of clean energy barriers in general. And then if time permits, we'll come back and kind of learn what folks were discussing in those rooms. And then we'll transition to a self-select breakout room option, and we'll have a listing of what those rooms will be. But we found that that's kind of fun to go and kind of learn a bit more from more topic-based things like the different technologies or something that might interest you about your idea. So I'll explain those once we get there as well, but just wanted to give an overview of that for everyone. And so with that, I'm just going to jump right into a quick refresher of the program and clean energy. A nice background sort of stage setting part of the conversation is, we know that, of course, the clean energy industry in Massachusetts has made a lot of strides in the last decade and even longer, but we still know that there's a persistent inequitable energy burden and access to clean energy. Low-income homes have a disproportionate energy burden. We know that solar adoption lags for renters and minority communities. The Mass Save non-participant study found renters, low-income households, and non-English speaking households are more likely to not utilize energy efficiency incentives. We essentially want to, state that all residents of Massachusetts need and deserve to be part of our collective clean energy future. And so in thinking of the development of this program, we also looked to previous models like Heat Smart and Solarize, and they offered some lessons learned as to kind of how we came about the structure of this program. We know that there's still persistent barriers. We know that not all communities are well served by a volunteer-led model, and maybe in missing those communities or businesses, we might be missing out on ideas for other models to expand clean energy. And we also know that leveraging relationships with trusted community partners is key to campaign success. So we kind of put that all into thinking for some of the parameters of this program. So we'll give a high-level refresher on or maybe new information on the goals and opportunities. So our overarching goal is to provide access to the benefits of clean energy to previous underserved populations in Massachusetts. And just wanted to highlight that we're using the language access to the benefits of clean energy. And we'll explain it in a few slides, but we're taking a pretty holistic view on what that means. It may not be just direct adoption of a technology. It could be meaningfully reducing energy burden or some other type of access to the benefits. So we're keeping a pretty open mind about what we'd like to or hope to maybe see underneath the program. And so we do hope to achieve this by investing directly in communities and community-based organizations and crowdsource those solutions for program models or projects. Because we believe that many of those solutions to clean energy access lie within the communities themselves. And so with that, You're all obviously here at the first portion of what we want to offer under the program, which is the workshops to get folks together, learn about the program, maybe meet a potential partner, or just kind of talk about your ideas. And then we're offering 2 different grants under the program. We've got the innovation and capacity building grants, which are much like a seed funding grant, $5,000 to $25,000 for exploring those early stage ideas. And then the larger scale implementation grants, $50,000 to $150,000 to actually put those program models or projects into play. So we know that it can be a little tricky to understand the nuances or the differences between each grant. So I wanted to give a little overview there. So the innovation and capacity building grant, like I mentioned, is more of a seed funding grant. So this is like a new or innovative idea that you have that you're in the process of exploring. It still needs discovery or refinement, or maybe even staff to do some research to make it go. So this, again, is sort of that early stage and working towards a potential future grant. The implementation grant, on the other hand, is something that you've already been thinking about. Maybe you've already got a structure in place, and it's relatively complete in terms of design, partners, and really is ready to go, and you really just need funding to make it happen. That said, if you do need to do, let's say, initial outreach as a part of your overall kind of program model project idea, that's something that could be built into your implementation grant. So just as a point of clarification there. And you can apply for both of the grants, but they do have to be for separate ideas, because we're essentially thinking that if you need that innovation and capacity building, you're in that early stage now, and you could possibly apply for that implementation grant in the future. But if you did have 2 different ideas, maybe one that was early stage and one that was later stage, then you can go ahead and apply to both. And I'm sure maybe that answers some questions, maybe leave some more, so we'll have an opportunity to chat in the breakout rooms or in the coming weeks if you're still maybe not quite sure about your potential idea. So also wanted to give some hypothetical examples and clarify the eligible uses. A few ideas for the innovation and capacity building grant. A community-based organization could apply to fund staff to conduct community outreach sessions to help inform design for a potential clean energy campaign. A municipality and a community-based organization could apply for funding to prepare to launch an energy efficiency campaign through the Municipal Partnership Strategy Program in 2022. A community-based organization could apply for funding to explore clean energy solutions to urban heat island impacts in a priority group neighborhood. So those are a few kind of high-level examples. I'm sure there's plenty out there. In terms of eligible uses, funds can be used for, but may not be limited to, staff time devoted to concept development or refinements, technical studies needed to move projects forward, costs for professional services like a grant writer, accountant, lawyer, or costs associated with ongoing community engagement. And of course, to be clear on all of these, this can be paid staff. That's definitely an eligible use. And like was kind of touched upon before, these can also be used towards future clean energy grants that are not through Mass CEC, such as a Municipal Partnership Strategies program, knowing that it is so closely aligned with the goals of this particular program. And funds should ideally be used within 2 years so that you can explore those ideas and hopefully get to implementation. For the implementation grants, a few ideas that we've brainstormed. It could be a partnership of a community organization and a municipality could apply to conduct a fully bilingual solarized style campaign, so an outreach campaign for solar PV. An energy efficiency company could partner with a community organization to maybe explore and implement an innovative financing model to package efficiency, electrification, and solar, and maybe also target landlords and renters. The biggest difference between the 2 grants, especially in terms of what you're required to do, let's say on the application, is the implementation grant is obviously much later stage. So we want to make sure that folks know that in that application, you should be presenting clear metrics for goals and outcomes, and that these are ready for implementation. And again, that community outreach portion can be built in. It doesn't necessarily need to be completed prior. And these funds can be utilized over a longer period of time for up to 3 years. So like I mentioned before, access to the benefits of clean energy, we want to take a different approach to defining exactly what that means. And so it can go beyond direct installation on people's homes, although of course that is eligible underneath the program. So we know that typical benefits of clean energy are things like cost savings, short and long-term, clean air, health. But there's also some non-traditional ideas for clean energy benefits. Insulation, for an example, is important for energy efficiency, but it can also enhance quality of life by offering enhanced soundproofing in a noisy neighborhood, or a multi-unit home, much like mine, that I often hear my neighbors kind of walking around or slamming doors, right? And well-designed sustainable lighting can enhance a neighborhood, or you could use heat pumps for cooling in addition to heating. So just trying to get folks to also think that there are a lot of kind of broader applications of clean energy as well. We mentioned before, we want the program models or projects to benefit previously underserved populations. And so for the benefits of for the purposes of this specific program, we're terming those previous underserved populations as population priority groups, and we're defining them as environmental justice populations as defined by basically kind of a combination of the 2017 EEA policy and what's also come out in the Next Generation Roadmap, mainly because we referenced the 2017 policy in the RFP, so we've got to hold to that. But we know that that recent climate bill also set some additional standards for the environmental justice definitions for the state. But on a high level, that encompasses low-income populations, English isolation populations, and minority populations as well. We're also terming renters and communities disproportionately impacted by environmental hazards, such as air quality or heat. It's also important to note that folks can, if you're not quite sure, or you think, I've got a group that's definitely previously underserved, but it's not on this list, or it's not clear that they're on this list, reach out to us, propose it, or maybe just ask. Definitely let us know. We want to keep it open. And it's also important to note that the groups don't have to be geographically bound. So it doesn't necessarily need to be within the bounds of a municipality or a neighborhood. It could be linked by an affinity group. And an example is there could be a religious network that's primarily minority members. And that could be a means to do an outreach campaign of some sort. So folks can definitely think creatively about that too, that it doesn't have to be, kind of strictly limited in that sense. So who can apply to the program? Of course, everyone and anyone that wants to increase equitable access to clean energy. We definitely want community-based organizations with a demonstrated history of working with priority populations to apply or be a part of a partnership. Other nonprofits or individuals are eligible. Municipalities, including municipal lighting plant communities, are eligible, and various types of interested for-profit organizations like installers or financial institutions. And the only stipulation there is that they must partner with that community-based organization that has the history of working with that specific population, because we want to ensure that we're hitting the right marks here, and we're uplifting the right groups. And in general, we're trying to, ensure that there's a lot of partnerships created with this program. And another purpose for that is also, in particular, if a nonprofit, let's say, doesn't have a 501c3 status, is just sort of a smaller group and doesn't have the ability to take in funds, it's a good idea to try to find a partner who might be able to be a lead applicant on the program to help, kind of help disperse those funds and manage sort of that challenge of the process. So if you have any questions on that, definitely we can touch base later, but wanted to give some clarity around that. So a little further question on kind of, do I need a partner? And really the way to think about it is taking a look at the, hopefully you've looked at the RFP or the request for proposals, and the both what you would need to put on the application, as well as in the application form itself and the selection criteria. But if you basically, if you can say that you aren't a group with a demonstrated history of working with a priority population, it's likely that you're going to need a partner with which to do so, even if you are a nonprofit, only because that's going to help strengthen your application and increase your chances for selection. While nonprofits and individuals are eligible without a partner, you still might want to consider it, right, if that statement applies to you. It's maybe also possible that you have a strong history working with a priority group and you happen to be for a profit. We'll talk about that, if that's a unique situation that applies to you, we'll talk about it, and I'll let you know what we think will be best for an application. So ultimately, if you've got questions or concerns, we want to ensure that folks don't miss something down the line and apply and sort of lose out on something. So just contact us. We'll help you navigate what the parameters of your application should be. Another thing that we wanted to mention is a couple of related programs or sort of similar programs so that folks could sort of know the breadth of what's out there. Our transportation team recently released a program called Act for All, which is a program to pilot innovative clean transportation adoption and deployment program models that further Massachusetts climate and equity goals. The goal is to increase access to these technologies and decrease burden from the transportation system. We don't have Jade on hand today, but Jade and the whole transportation team will be made available to you, at some point after this. So if you're interested in those types of things, in addition to this program, let us know and we'll get you all in touch. And the program that we also mentioned before was the Mass Save Municipal Partnership Strategy Program. This is one that you can apply to get some of our funding for and the funding for this program. And it's a community-based program to leverage knowledge, trusted relationships, and experience from municipalities and community-based organizations to increase basically the participation in energy efficiency offerings. So referencing back to that non-participant study that I mentioned on that first slide. Amanda's not with us tonight either, but if it's a program that you're interested in, we can also help get you connected with that information as well. So if that's something that piques your interest, let us know and we'll help you get connected there. So a quick refresher or kind of reminder on the timeline. We did launch this opportunity a few weeks ago. For the innovation and capacity building, we're offering 2 rounds of funding in sort of this funding bucket. We're offering it in 2 different deadlines, both in sort of late summer and fall. So the first deadline is August 18th, and the second one is November 10th. So that effectively gives about a 3- and 6-month window for application for both of those opportunities. And the implementation grants have just the 1 deadline because we're going to also open that up again in the spring for another round of the implementation. And the reason why we want to do that is such that hopefully folks maybe will try to apply in August for the innovation grant to maybe build towards an implementation grant in the spring. So we wanted to kind of build that time in so that you could successfully get funding for both if you needed to for that similar idea. And so the implementation grant that will also be due August 18th, so that kind of 3-month window. And then we'll keep everyone posted when we open up that second round in the spring. And of course, you can see here the workshops. We're here doing them now, and we may host some in the future depending on interest if folks maybe missed some of the first ones and felt like it was valuable. So. And just a quick reminder on kind of all the support we're offering. Reach out to us for a one-on-one feedback session if you want to talk about your ideas or any questions you might have. Definitely attend office hours. We hosted a bunch in the previous 2 weeks before the first workshop. We're hosting 2 more weeks of them after this workshop. So we've got that schedule on the website. It's a great way to just come log in and get questions answered. We're continually building sort of more education on the website. We're starting to put up more videos and educational modules. So definitely keep checking the website to learn more there and kind of help inform your potential ideas. And we also, again, want to encourage networking, meeting partners. So we're hosting a Slack channel, which the link's on the website, but we can also send information out with these slides after. And we're also willing to help make facilitated introductions. If you definitely need a partner and you kind of are in this region or have this idea, we want to kind of help make that possible to the extent that we can. So if you think that's something that you need or you're interested in, definitely take one of those 2 approaches as well. So before we dig into the breakout rooms, we just wanted to give a sort of a high-level refresher on what we sort of view as some of the potential clean energy solution opportunities that could be utilized through this program or for the potential programs that you're interested in running. There's energy efficiency opportunities, so building envelope improvements, appliances, heating and hot water, and lighting. There's also renewable energy options like solar hot water, solar PV, or community shared solar. And there's also other measures like energy storage or electric vehicles. We also know that there's continued barriers to accessing the benefits of clean energy. So hopefully in thinking about both what the opportunities are and these barriers, we'll start to sort of spark some ideas for some potential solutions. But we know that there's still high upfront costs. There's still a landlord-renter split incentive, so not a great incentive always for a landlord to want to kind of install clean energy technologies. Oftentimes there's a barrier with low credit scores. Installers often have customer acquisition challenges. Oftentimes folks need renovations to support clean energy, and that can be an additional financial barrier. Sometimes folks don't have a lack of available space, especially if they're renters. There's still a lack of knowledge. There's also a lack of seeding, which seeding you can envision as kind of like, again, like a solarized style program where you kind of, get folks in a community to become early adopters, tell their friends and neighbors about the program. And, we've seen that often, more often than not in sort of affluent communities and, certain types of demographics, but not more broadly. So we know that, again, that's where there's a lack of seeding, in particular in minority communities. So that's something that needs to improve as well. And we also know that there's a lack of representative workers in the industry as well. So we know that there's a whole host of things we want to kind of think about in this whole broader context. So with that, now that we've put that out, we want to hear from you and have you kind of tell us what you think about those two concepts, both what are good clean energy solutions and also what do you also see as persistent barriers. So Jason is going to launch an interactive poll for us so we can hear more from you on that. And ideally this will, we'll take these conversations to our breakout rooms or to our future ideas and continue that conversation. So I think as the poll is in progress, you won't see it, but then we'll be able to share it afterwards. We'll be able to share the results. So we'll give everyone some time to fill that out. So we'll maybe give everyone about 30 more seconds. I think we've got almost everyone has voted. So we'll give it about 30 more seconds to hear from everyone. All right, why don't we go ahead and post those results. So I think everyone should be able to see the results now. Of course, there's a pretty good split between, what we think is still really a persistent, barrier that really needs to be addressed, but definitely a clear, sort of consensus there, and that access to financing is incredibly important. And there was also a good amount of response for others, so that'll be a good point of conversation, I think, in the breakout rooms. And this is also, I would say, we did this poll last week, and for what solutions are you most excited about sort of working with, the majority of folks also believe that it was some combination. So that's interesting to see again that seems to kind of be the consistent response there. So thank you so much for participating in that. I think that will hopefully be a good point to start, start those conversations in the breakout rooms. So with that, a few more things to kind of remind folks, and again, start those conversations is now that we've thought and sort of brainstormed that there are a lot of different both barriers and also clean energy solution opportunities, wanted to present a high level, a bit of information on the fact that there are a lot of incentive programs still available for a lot of these technologies. So you can see the various ones for PV, for heat pumps and solar hot water, energy efficiency, and even EVs and storage. So kind of various state and federal tax incentives, various loan opportunities, and different types of grants. And so a lot of interesting things to think about there. That's also something that as we go into those breakout rooms in the sort of tail end, we'll be able to ask some more specific questions about those. And those are all also things that we'll get folks connected with down the line, whether it's maybe a direct training or maybe getting in touch with somebody to ask questions about, okay, I want to design a program around energy efficiency. What kind of options do I have available? So wanted to kind of put that out there. We won't go through all of them, but just to give everyone a sense of that. And this is a nice breakout. I think Bev's also going to share this in her breakout room later. But there are a lot of income qualified programs for energy efficiency and renewables. There's various programs for renters, especially if you're on a discount electric rate, or fuel assistance for paying heat as well. And there's also some really good incentives as well for multifamily owners that have income qualified tenants. So that's something to think about as well, that it may not always be that an individual or an owner is income qualified, but it might also be that your tenants are income qualified. So there's, especially with the energy efficiency, there's a lot of free opportunities there. So that's something that Bev's going to talk a bit more about later on in some of the breakout rooms. So if you have an interest in that, definitely join that breakout room and we'll help you learn about that. And so this is also something Bev put out too that was really nice when thinking about that, and hopefully this will start informing some of our conversations, is some potential ideas beyond what we had shared before. You could educate renters about the benefits that they may qualify for, under Mass Save, or maybe a campaign to reach owners of multifamily buildings with those various incentives. So just a couple more things to kind of get folks thinking. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions. And I know the chat has been active. I haven't been able to check it out, but I'm going to open it up now and just start going through to see if there's any questions in here. I did see a question that was answered. We will be sharing both the presentation and the slides for everyone. So we'll definitely get that for folks after the session. Let's see what questions we have here. Saw a good comment. Landlords and tenant paid energy no incentive to invest. Yep, that's definitely a barrier. Something definitely to discuss. The video of the first workshop is definitely available. It's actually on the website now, so it's something that you can check out on EmPower. We'll send everyone a link in the chat. Maybe Jason can do that. Yeah, and I don't see any other questions. So maybe we'll give it. Oh, go ahead. Somebody jump in.
We have a hand raised.
Oh, there is a hand raised. I'm sorry, I did not see that. Hi, Gina.
Hi. Hi. My name is Gina. I oversee the Franklin County Regional Housing Authority. And my question is, are housing authorities, public housing authorities, categorically excluded from the program?
No.
Okay. That wasn't, so we're not strictly, we do have an affiliate nonprofit, but I did not see that in the list of eligible entities. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to highlight, because I think in a lot of ways we are listing things that were kind of top of mind, but weren't necessarily an exhaustive list. So okay. Ultimately, most folks are eligible, and really the things to think about are just who I might need to potentially partner with. And so, especially if you're an entity that's, has maybe that experience with a group that you want to work with, you may just qualify kind of independently. So good question. It's pretty much open to everyone. Yep. So there is a question, there's a couple more questions here. So are there specified communities impacted by hazards that you're interested in? I'd say that's a good question worth discussing. I don't think that we had anything specifically in mind, but I do think it's thinking about if that's something that and are aware of and can identify, or if you think about a specific issue, let's say like urban heat, there may be a way to identify communities or sort of other groups impacted. So I think a lot of that would be sort of self-selected, kind of tell us what's going on and how you might want to approach it. So nothing specifically on that. There's a question here. Could implementation money be used to supplement mass save incentives for heat pumps? That's a good question that's come up a lot in terms of, how can we use the money? We've given some high level eligible uses for the money, and, in particular for the implementation grant, we've kept it pretty open and have said, well, put forth a program model or project. And, we think ultimately that, we don't necessarily want to see all of the money just strictly go to capital. And by what we mean is if you're going to apply for $100,000, we don't want $100,000 of that to just go to pay for heat pumps, let's say. But what we would like to see is there could be a portion of that if it's some sort of an innovative kind of financing model, or maybe a modest buy down as a part of a program, like a specific program. So we want to see some creative solutions. That way it can be sort of more widely replicable. Sorry, that's a really hard word to say. Because, we know that we don't have an exhaustive amount of money to just be able to just put heat pumps in every home. Otherwise we would, so we want to see the money kind of go a little bit creatively further. So hopefully that answers the question. But if not, we can definitely discuss that a bit further. Great, and Jason has posted a link of the recording to the workshop. Thank you, Jason. So we'll maybe give it another 30 seconds to a minute or so if folks have any other questions, either if you just want to jump in, unmute yourselves, or if you want to type it in, either or is fine. All right, then not to worry on that. There'll be plenty of time for sort of questions and discussion in the breakout room. So I say, in the interest of time, we'll just keep moving. Hope we did get one more question. Staff money could be city employees, or Susan, do you want to maybe elaborate a little bit on this question? I think you're maybe asking about, like, can the the money go to pay like city staff or municipal staff? Like, maybe if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned that staff could be covered, and I was just wondering, are cities able to accept this money, or could it be nonprofit, or just citizens, who are hired from the community who speak local languages, perhaps, who could be trained and paid, whether it's stipends or salaries, so that we can bring more people into the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, especially the latter groups that you've mentioned, I think that's really what we really love to see the money go towards. We think kind of anyone in that partner group can, depending on your kind of whatever your mutual agreement is. But I think that's definitely one of our targets, is to really, in particular, get folks in the community out there, especially those that, like you said, maybe speak the local language or something like that. So yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, what we will do now is transition into our first set of breakout rooms. So the first set of breakout rooms, like I mentioned before, we're going to spend about 35 minutes in them, and each will have someone from Mass CEC on that's going to ask a couple of kind of guided questions. Ultimately, we just want to get folks kind of chatting, talking about again, some of the things we outlined before, but then also digging into some potential program ideas that you might have. So there should be maybe 10 or so folks in each room. And we're gonna, I think we've already got them preset, if that's right, Jason. So I think, yeah, I think we're just gonna jump right in. So
And-
Jason, if you wanna, go ahead.
Yep, the plan right now is to have them set for 45 minutes from the time now.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a sort of between 35 and 45, and we'll see. We'll check in with everyone at about 35 minutes in, see how the conversation is going. If we need a handful more minutes, if it's a good discussion, we'll keep it going. Otherwise, we'll drop back in, report out, and then go to sort of our next series of breakout rooms. So yeah. So I think with that. Jason will push the button and we'll all get dispersed. And hopefully no one will get stuck in the main session, but if somebody does, Jason will help direct you.
And everybody should be off.